Hey, Pickle Posse. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Rob Winters, founder of PodOps, and today we're going to take a look at some of our newest features that have been released over the last couple of weeks. So let me go ahead and get my screen share up here, and we will jump in. All right, so you're seeing on my screen the PodOps dashboard. So whether you are new or you've been using PodOps for a while, it's going to look something like this. We are first going to look at chapters. The chapters functionality is available to all users. You will find this within any one of your podcasts. Come to the podcast page, click on manage, and visit the episodes tab. You can click on of any podcast after it's been uploaded. It does not need to be published. It can be in draft mode, it can be scheduled, it doesn't matter. About halfway down the page over here on the right is where you'll find the chapters functionality. I'm going to click on create edit chapters, and that's going to launch this screen here. So this episode doesn't have any chapters yet, so you're looking at a fresh screen. We can start by clicking add new chapter on the left. And you need to input the time. So it's in hours, minutes, and seconds. Now you can see that my podcast at the top is about 3 minutes and 29 seconds. This is a pretty short podcast. So we could say something like 20 seconds. This is the introduction to the podcast. You can really put whatever you'd like in there. You can also put a link. So the links can be handy, especially if you mention sponsors or anybody that's supporting your podcast. This is a great way to give them a shout out. When your audience is listening to the episode, if they click on it, it'll open a new browser page or a new web browser in their phone or whatever they're listening on so that they can get to that content. It does not embed the content into your actual episode. So let's go ahead and click create. So you'll see there's a success message in the upper corner. I've created my chapter here, and I can go ahead and create as many as I want. There's no limit, but you will notice that we now have actions on the right. So if you made a typo or you decide to change the link or remove the link, you can click on the pencil icon at any time to make changes. You can also delete a chapter. So if you click the trash icon, it's going to remove that, and you can disable a chapter. So if something is temporary, maybe you have a sponsorship for a set amount of days, weeks, or months, you could come in, create that, and then when you're done with it, go ahead and disable it. One thing that's important to be aware of is if somebody has already listened to your show or downloaded it and you add or make changes, it's unlikely they're going to see those changes unless they come back and re-download the episode. So it is something to consider as you push out your chapters. It's more important as a new episode is released versus going retroactive. So any additional changes you make, go ahead and click save and update, and those will be applied. Chapters work across any of the applications that will accept them. We also just added support via PodLove, so this also works within Spotify. All right, let's click back into our episodes. And we're going to look at the new Create AI and Show Notes functionality. So after you upload an episode, or if you come back into an episode, we'll click on the pencil icon. We have the Create AI titles and Create AI show notes in the upper right corner here. So even though this is an episode where I've already added that content, you can still utilize this functionality. And these buttons are visible to everybody. So if I click on the titles option, I need to give it a prompt. So you don't have to be highly specific, but the more specific you are, the better content it's going to suggest back. So I'm just coming up with a quick suggestion. It generally, if you make typos like I was making and making that suggestion, it can figure that out. So you'll get a few different options. So I told it this was an episode about short form content. So it's suggesting things like quick bites, a podcast on short form content. You always get 5 options here. If you don't like them, you can enter a new prompt, click Geniify it again, and it'll give you new suggestions. If you find the one that you like, go ahead and click use it. It's going to plop it into the episode title. Same thing for show notes, and we'll cheat a little bit. We're going to copy our title, paste that into the show notes prompt. It's going to take a minute to think about it, look at what you put in, and then it's going to make a couple of suggestions. Be sure that you read this because with the show notes option here, it's creating this not based on the audio or video that you've uploaded. It's creating it based on the content that you just input. So that's a little different than the Genie functionality that we'll look at in a moment. If you find the one you like, hit use it, and then it'll pop it in. And after you make changes, hit save at the bottom. We're not going to do that because I've already actually published this episode. All right, let's go back and let's look at the Genie functionality. So those are the AI and AI show note for titles creation. But for the Genie functionality, that's available if you have an Audio Pro, AV Pro, or a network plan. So again, this is within your episode section. And let's go ahead and we're just going to upload a new piece of content. You can either select something from your desktop or you can drag and drop it onto the page. And I'm just going to grab a song that happens to be on my computer. And once that goes ahead and processes and uploads, you're going to get the Genie button over here on the right. And of course, my computer is lagging, so we're going to give it a refresh. And we'll do that one more time. There we go. All right, so the file finished uploading, and we can see we got the PodOps Genie option here on the right. So when I click that, I'm getting 4 options. These are not selected by default, so you need to tell Genie what you want it to process. I'm going to select everything. The difference between this and the AI titles and show notes is that the Genie is actually going through the audio or the video file that you've uploaded. So this is looking at your episode to suggest a title, to suggest the show notes and the description. We'll go ahead and click on the Genify It button. This message here is just to let you know it's going to take a minute for this to process. It is not instantaneous because the larger the file, the longer it takes for the Genie to go through your content. Go ahead and click that. You'll get a success message in the upper right corner. And then it's going to take us back to the episodes tab here. And this will be saved in draft mode as an untitled episode while the Genie is going through and reviewing your content. Now, I actually processed this file earlier so we could easily see this. Let's come in and click the pencil icon. And because I said this is a song, it's the actual title of the the song is Joker. So it called it Joker in Bed, which is pretty accurate. You can see the song could be seen as empowering anthem to allow the singer to assert self-worth. Again, that's pretty accurate. And then there's this new descriptions box. So the descriptions box is something that only appears on your PodOps podcast website. This does not necessarily pull in to your RSS feed. So it's not like your show notes or your transcript. It's really just an additional piece of content that is completely optional for you to use on your podcast website. And then, of course, the transcript. So with the transcript, as far as how it creates it, it's putting the content or the content exactly as it is spoken or whatever's being heard. So you might need to go through and make some adjustments. As this is a song, I might want to break it out so you can see the verses versus the chorus, and you might want to put in timestamps. So right now, the Genie's not doing that for you. It's optional, but definitely something to consider. And if you need to make changes, you can, of course, click the Genie button again, but it shouldn't need to be run a second time if everything looks good. All right, moving on. We've got our show notes, our chapters, and the next thing, this was a highly requested item. So we get a lot of users who reach out that they are interested in moving their podcast, but they do not want to lose their analytics. So that's something I can very much respect and understand. If you import your podcast from any other provider into PodOps, there's going to be a new option within your podcast in the analytics tab. So I've opened a podcast that I imported earlier, and I'm going to click on analytics. And if I scroll about halfway down the page of the analytics section, and right now, obviously, there are no analytics because I haven't imported anything or added anything. You have this section here to add data to your imported episodes. If you built your podcast within PodOps, you won't see this section. This only appears if you imported an external podcast. And you have 2 options on the far right: update stats, which allows you to select episode by episode and input the information. So, for example, and I want you to kind of pay attention here, you'll see it set to today's date at the moment. But if I select one of my episodes from the list, you'll notice it does update. So, we're pulling the data from your original RSS feed as best we can, which includes things like your title and your publication date. If that date needs to be changed, you can change that. And the only required field here is the number of downloads. So a lot of other hosting services, that's all they give you as far as an export. So we'll go ahead and put in 100. We allow you to also input views and plays. So if you can get that data from your former host, you can put it in, but you're not required to. A view is the number of visitors to your podcast episode webpage. A lot of other hosts aren't providing that information, so you're probably going to leave this blank. And if you do have the number of plays, you can also put that in. So we'll put in 50, we'll leave our views blank and hit save. You'll see that this has been updated successfully on the right. And there's my item that I've just input. So this was from 2023. So if I want to see that, I'm going to have to set my calendar, or excuse me, my analytics back to 2023. By default, it's in 2024, and that's going to take a moment to pull it up. But you will see here at the top, I've got those 50 plays reflected. I've got the 100 downloads, and those are accurate. So I'm just going to refresh. We don't really need to see the chart, and that way we can move forward. The other option, especially if you have a really big podcast, and we understand, it can be painful to manually go through and put these in one at a time, is you can import your stats. So if you click the import stats, the first option here, you'll see it says download. This is a template of your podcast. So when you open this Excel, you will see we have all of your episode titles as well as that import date. So all you need to do is fill out the views, plays, and downloads. You don't want to change any of the headers or these IDs in column A. That's what we're matching on. So we'll go ahead and just throw in a couple random numbers. And for anything you don't have information on, just simply leave it blank and skip over it. And you can see I've only put in a tiny bit of information, but you'll see that this is going to work when we select it in the second option. Let's grab that from my downloads. We're going to hit import. Again, this might take a moment based on how large your podcast is and how much data you're inputting. So don't, panic if it kind of sits here for a moment and thinks about what you're importing. It's a good opportunity for a coffee break. And we'll just refresh. Oh, there you can see on the upper right, 5 stats were imported. And there you go. Everything that we just updated, you can see it put zeros where we skipped lines. Everything else is in here. I can see my information at the top of the page has been correctly updated. And if I wanted to go back into the historical data, I can see that in the charts. So that's why it's really important not to change the dates. If they are accurate, that is mapping to these charts at the top up there. If you do input something and you realize you made a mistake, which is very easy to do, maybe in this one I meant 5 plays and 10 downloads, I can come under action, click the pencil icon. I can easily make that update, hit save, and it's going to refresh. Oh, I need to update or select my title. Whoops. There we go. And if you decide you don't want one of these items listed, you can always click delete. It's going to remove it for you. So we've tried to make it really simple so you can get your historical data into the system. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. And we can also help you with importing or formatting this Excel during that migration process. The only thing you need to make sure you do before you get to this screen is make sure you've imported the podcast. You can do that from your dashboard. There is an option on the very top of the page. Let's go back here. Or there's also on the left navigation, I should note, import podcast. That'll take you to the same thing. And here is where you're going to drop in your RSS feed from any other provider, whether you're on Buzzsprout, Libsyn, Podbean, or other. Drop it in there. Make sure you don't have any spaces before, after. Hit search podcast, and then just follow the steps. And again, if you need help, reach out to us at hi@thepodops.com. We're happy to help you migrate your podcast as well as answer any questions. So those are new features that have been released in the last 2 weeks. We have some more exciting things coming, so keep an eye on our social accounts, and we will have upcoming live training scheduled in the next week or two. So also take a look at our live trainings tab on thepodops.com. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Happy podcasting, and thank you for tuning in.